I know that Phoenix is going to blow up just like San Diego is and other churches, Sunnyvale and Tijuana, Las Vegas. Las Vegas now has their own building, their own church rented, and he's having 2 services as we speak, 12 o'clock and 6 o'clock, and there's no stopping now. So it is my pleasure to introduce to you the future pastor of the church FTC Phoenix, my son Sam Valverde Jr.
Praise the Lord, everybody. Good morning. Happy Father's Day. What an introduction. Want to wish everybody a very happy Father's Day. I got to start off by saying this. It feels so good to be here. And thank you. Thank you, my cheering team over here. It feels amazing to be here because for the last 12 months, we have been somewhat homeless as far as a church up until what you saw recently. We had been, trying to work and get ready. And I would get jealous. I'd get envious when pre-COVID-19, when I'd see all the church full and see you guys worshiping and praising God and just being together. It makes you miss home. So I am very happy to be home. I'm very happy to be in this season of my life. And I want to start off real quick with the title of my message, and I'll get into it, and I promise I won't be long. I know we have a lot of stuff to do today, and I've never said this before in my life, but I have one more sermon to preach after you this morning. But the title of my message this morning is A Father's Seasons. Father's Day, unlike Mother's Day, it seems like Mother's Day is easy unless you've been married for a few minutes and you know the stress of having to celebrate your mom and your wife and everybody involved in life. But when it comes to Father's Day, there seems to be a wave of emotions. There seems to be some people who very easily can say Happy Father's Day. Simple, easy, it means something. And there's other extremes where saying Happy Father's Day brings pain. Saying Happy Father's Day does not bring good memories. It brings back maybe bad memories. But most of all, I've actually tried to figure this out and try to understand why this is. And I think it's because God has placed such a big responsibility on dads, on us. It's not easy being a dad. Not to say it's easy being a mom, because I know it's not. But today, gentlemen, today, dads, I'm going to try to give you an out today. All right? Amen. I know my brother's happy about that over here. And I don't mean an excuse for bad behavior. I mean an out of possibly not knowing or understanding the seasons of life, the seasons of being a father. You see, before you can be a father, you have to be a son. And there's a process that goes into being a father. Being a son is really the first experience you have in what it is to give and take in a relationship. And I want to talk just a little bit about a father's seasons today. I again want to wish everybody an extremely happy Father's Day. I am not going to lie, the last few weeks in preparing have been nerve-wracking. To all of those that are watching online, you don't see the beautiful faces with masks that I see this morning. But I want to welcome you and tell you that I love you, and happy Father's Day to all those that are watching. I also want to greet all of our team and our people that are in Phoenix right now watching. I love you, and I thank you for your prayers. I gave them a preview of my message last week, so this will be their second time going through it. But it's okay, I fixed a few things. But I'm serious. I am really happy to be in the house of God this morning. I sense a little COVID-19 hesitation to worship God. And I've been away from home for a year. And when I walked in this morning, I got here about 6:30. I walked straight to the prayer room because it felt familiar and it felt like home. And I said, I can't wait to worship with the people that signed up this morning. And some of you are a little rusty, a little COVID-19 rusty. But how many of you are thankful for where God has you at or where He's brought you to? I've had a lot of people tell me, do you wish 2020 would end? And I said, no, because I still haven't learned what I need to learn from this year. 2020 has been a terrible year in the sense of the things that have happened in this world. But if you are in a season where you need to hear a word from God, it's been the best season. And it's all about how you look at the seasons in our life. I know that we tend to be tough on dads on Father's Day. Even when I love to laugh about this with my brother Sam. About 2 years ago, my dad preached a series on marriages, and he just knocked all the dads, the husbands. He knocked us down on the first message. How many of you remember when he said the words, "You may love your wife, but you don't cherish your wife"? How many of you remember that? I couldn't forget that for a while because my wife would remind me about that. But we tend to be a little bit tougher on dad. And today I want to give you maybe a reason. I want to give you an out. Again, not an excuse for bad mistakes or bad behavior, but maybe a different angle, mom, son, grandpa, grandma, a different angle of what's been happening in our life or what happens to a father. Turn to your spouse, turn to your family. If you came with your family, and just say, I think I was in the wrong season. Go ahead. I want to hear you say it. Say, I think I was in the wrong season. If you're at home and watching in the living room, making breakfast, tell them, I think maybe I was in the wrong season. Dads, we seem to get a lot of blame, probably. There's a lot of responsibility on us, and deservedly so, because we are the spiritual leaders of the home. And I want to start here in Ecclesiastes 3:1. It says, there is a time for everything and a season for every activity under the heavens. I want to go to Genesis 8:22. As long as the earth endures, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night will never cease. When we talk about the seasons of life, when we talk about summer and winter, when I left my home on Thursday, it was 109 degrees. Okay, the air conditioning was blasting, the entire family in shorts and t-shirts, ready to come to California and do what we need to do. And as soon as we get a little closer to home, the temperature, we see it drop and drop and drop. I get to my parents' house and it's 65 degrees. And I said, what happened? We left Arizona and it was 109 degrees, understanding that summer has already hit. Right now at home, if I were to go out and take a walk at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I'd probably faint of heat. I'd dehydrate. You don't see anybody out right now during the days usually, unless you're a native and you've been there for 30 years and you get used to it. But my wife and I made the mistake one time of going grocery shopping at 11 o'clock in the morning. We show up to Sam's Club and Costco, and here in California around that time, it's packed. No parking. We get there, park in the front. Walk in, all the samples we can eat, pre-COVID-19. There's plenty of food, there's toilet paper. What I'm saying is, people knew at that time, you don't go grocery shopping, because when you put your stuff in the car, by the time you get home, guess what happens? Melted, gone, spoiled. Not really, but you get what I'm trying to say. The season is different. You understand, and how you live in the summer in Arizona is completely different than what you do in the winter in the Midwest. For those of you that grew up in the Midwest, Chicago area, Kansas, Missouri, wherever you're at, wherever you're watching, you know that during winter, you have to have a special jacket. You've got to have special covering. you know that that's the season to stay in. That's the season where what you wear is different. And what I'm talking about this morning are climates that control how we live. Climates and things that control what we do, how we react. In a few months, where are we? We're in June. In a few months, you're going to start seeing what? Christmas. You're going to start seeing Christmas trees in Costco. And it's going to be 105 outside in July and August. And you're saying, man, I remember thinking they're pushing the season on us rather quickly. And as parents, separate now from what we can't control, seasons as a parent, as a dad, go by quickly. And I'll get to that in just a moment. Our moods change in seasons. How many of you are excited for fall season? Because I'll see most of the women here start putting on their sweaters, and the pumpkin spice scones come back, and lattes, and everybody says fall weather, and we prepare for season. Our moods change in the season. When it's starting to come into Christmas time and the holidays, don't you all get a little bit more jolly, right? Who gets a little bit more excited? It's the season controls our moods sometimes. In the next few months, I believe the greatest season will start, and that is football season. When wives will say that I'm going to lose my husband for the next 4 months, right? We start church at 9 o'clock here, and for those that are into this season, you understand that fantasy football starts picking up, and I've seen people in church changing their draft right before the preaching. You have till 10 o'clock, and you're getting people in and out of lineups, and the season of what's happening controls what we do. Without realizing, it's just clockwork now. In January, I do this. In July, I do this. In September, I do this. In August, I do this. We don't even think about it anymore. We just go to storage and get our jackets in September as we prepare for the next season. Right now, they say that June, the months of April to May, the April to July are prime seasons for harvesting strawberries. Strawberries are one of the most popular fruits in the world, and you can get them through every season. You can get them in the winter, you can get them at any time, but the best quality, the best time to get it is right now in the month of June. Experts say that to grow and to harvest strawberries, the best state to do that is California. Why? Because of the season. Because they need warm days and they need cold nights. And an expert and a farmer can look at a strawberry and say, that one is okay. That one was probably picked out of season. But the prime ones, the ones that taste the best, the ones that look the best maybe, the ones that are of quality, you get them now. You get them in June. And the experts and the people that pick them and the farmers, they know that right now is prime time for strawberries. And you see what I've just explained to you in the last few minutes is something that you and I cannot control. It's something that we have zero control over. It's the way God created it. And as we read in Genesis and as we read in Ecclesiastes, there is nothing under the heavens, nothing under the stars, that God created the season, that He controls what happens in the rotations of the earth. He controls all of it. Every activity under the sun, think about that. Every activity under the sun, He puts it as a season of what happens on how we react. And I bet right now you've probably maybe been thinking, as I have, that it's true. The time of the year controls what I think. The time of the year controls what I do. The time of the year controls my mood. The time of the year controls how I treat my family. The time of the year controls me so much I don't even realize it sometimes. Why? Because it's the seasons of life. And to put it in perspective, there's nothing that you and I can do about it. It's kind of above our pay grade. That's something that God controls. And it's something that He has created. Nothing we can do about that. But see, that's not what That's not what I'm talking about today. I wanted to make sure that we understand the different type of seasons in life. And as we head into summertime, and as we start to get into the Mother's Day and the Father's Day, and like Pastor just said, our world has been turned around. Today, I was excited to be here, but I'm used to seeing a lot more people, and I'm used to seeing, it looks like some of you are going to rob a bank, right? I'm still, you don't get used to that, but what have we done with this season? We've adapted. Now you go to stores and you go to banks and you go everywhere and there's people with masks. Why? We adapt. What's important to know, and what I want to communicate to you this morning as I start to get into the main part of my message, is that God has made a promise to you. God has made a promise to you, to your family, to your children, to the generations that have come before you, and the generations that will come after you. God has a promise for you, and it will be realized whether we like it or not. But understanding why we are in the season that we are in is more important than getting out. And let me explain. As you just witnessed, my wife and I were blessed last year with the birth of Ellie, our daughter, who came as a complete surprise. In the middle of a move, in the middle of just the chaos of change, we're preparing, and she says, "Hey, I have something to tell you." "Okay, great. What is it? Do you want to do this? Do you want to go eat?" She says, "No, we're having a baby." What? I thought that season was over. No, it's starting. It's starting all over. And you're like, okay, what did I do? You adapt. You get the stroller out again. You get the car seat out again. You get diapers out again. It's like, what happened? Life happened. But what's important here is that why, as fathers, why as we go through our life, why do things not work out? Why do we struggle so much? Why does it seem like there's maybe more tension between sons and fathers? Maybe more tension between daughters and fathers? When you say something about someone's mom in the streets, what happens? It's a fight like that. "Don't talk about my mama," right? I mean, I've said that many times. You can talk about me, but don't talk about my mama, right? Not to be mean, but I don't know if I've ever, maybe lately in the last 2 years I've said that, but before that, I don't know if I've ever said that about my dad. I've never really said, "Don't talk about my dad." Maybe in the last 2 years. But historically, right? Historically, you don't get that feeling. You don't get that same tension and passion when it comes to talking about your mom. As fathers, it's important to understand a lot of things, but when I look at, for example, fathers that have young kids, let's say you have kids that are under 5, under 6 years old, that season is so different than a man that has grandchildren already, who has older kids, who's fighting different things, who's going through different things. And it's not necessarily to bridge the gap from him to him, but it's for him to say, what would I do so different? What could I have done differently so that my kids maybe would have served God different or better, or my grandkids? I heard someone say that you really don't know how well you did as a father until your grandkids are alive and until they either serve God or not. That's when you know how well you did as a father. Now let's look at, I want to share a few scriptures on why it's so important and why God talks about seasons in life and why he talks about summer and winter. And I mentioned a few minutes ago that as you sit here this morning, or if you're watching online, you're right away thinking maybe what season I'm in my life. It could be a season of frustration. It could be a season where relationships between you, your father, your kids are severed, are broken. It could be where your kids are growing up and you don't understand anymore. Yet, we were sons. We went through that. We were daughters. And now we're facing the same issues and challenges with our kids that maybe we went through. And it's kind of understanding. You ever discipline your children, or you start to talk to them in a certain way, and then all of a sudden you say, I sound just like my, or man, that sounded a lot like my mom. The other day I did something, and I was talking, and Celeste kind of looked at me, and I said, man, that sounded just like my dad. Why did that transfer to me so easily? Why did that nature come to me so easily? Why? Because that's what I saw. I was a son before I became a father. And some of the, our family has been extremely transparent in our life. And some of the things that my parents did and did as I was growing up, as I look at my son, my boys and my girls, I find myself doing the same thing. And I wanted so bad to do something different. I wanted so bad a different outcome. And I'm doing the same thing. And I sat here a few weeks ago when I started preparing for this message, and I said, God, why? Why am I following in the same footsteps? Not just the great footsteps, but there's good and bad. Don't think that your mom and dad or my parents, it's not just roses every single day. We know the reality of family. And the most important thing that I can get as I started to enter a season into my life is this: God, don't take me out of this season until I learned what I needed to learn from this season in my life. And that message and that prayer is for you. But the first thing that you need to do that we need to do as a parent, and this could be, as I know today it's Father's Day, and that'll be the focus of my talk. But the most important thing we can do as humans in relationships, if you have relationships that are not working out, relationships that are severed, it seems like with family especially, it's so complicated. And there's so many emotions. And it's like, no, you're just in a season in your life. And we are so in a rush when things don't go right, when things are difficult, when things are not working for us. We want to get out. There's a rush to get out, and God, who controls the season, is saying, not yet. Not yet. You're not ready yet. You're not ready to get out of what you're in. And it could be so frustrating because we serve a God. Now I'm gonna preach now. We serve a God that we know that with the snap of his fingers can get you out of your problem. How many of you know about that God? That we know that he can fix it with the snap of his fingers. And as believers, how frustrating is it for us to go through life knowing that God can take this out, that God can fix my husband, that God can fix this relationship, and he doesn't do it. And it doesn't happen. And I don't get out of this rut. I don't get out of this depression. I don't get out of this anxiety. I don't get it. It doesn't get fixed. And we get so frustrated with the season that we want out. And God, who created the season, is saying, no, you're not ready. Not yet. Proverbs 20, verse 4, sluggards do not plow in season, and then during harvest they look, but find nothing. In Paul's second letter to Timothy, he tells him, Paul asked Timothy to travel before winter. Matthew 24:20, Jesus speaking to his disciples, and he tells them and he prays that their flight be not in winter. Why the significance? Because even in those times, even in this scenario, God knew, people knew that there are things you don't do in a season. There are things that you just do different in a season. And if I can turn this now to dads, is that how many times have we messed things up for our family because we didn't know the season that we were in? We were thinking we're in summer where it's time to harvest, and God had us in winter. And we tried to get out. We fight and scratch and say, no, God, this is what I'm going to do. And God keeps bringing us back. And he's saying, don't. It's winter. It's not your time. And we frustrate our wives. We frustrate our kids because of our bad decisions, because of things that we do, because we're out of season. The Bible talks about 2 seasons only, summer and winter. He talks about what we just read about a sluggard who does nothing, and then on harvest time, he comes out. And how many times as fathers do we do nothing to establish a relationship with God for our kids? And then we expect to be a harvest, and they grow up, and they leave the Lord, and then we wonder why. And we ask, God, I served you. God, I did this. God, I tried my hardest. And God turns around and tells us, you rushed out of your season. You weren't ready. You see, God knows what we need and when we need it. And a lot of times we, as believers, we fight him. We doubt. Imagine this. The God who created the heavens and the earth, the God who saved us, the God who picked us up and turned us around, the God who gives us so much, the God who is our healer, the God who's our provider, the God that has done so much for you. He's the one we doubt. He's the one we doubt, and we have faith in ourselves. And we should be doubting us, the doubters, and not him, the God of heaven. And what do? We doubt him when we say, God, get me out of this. I need out. I want out. Or I need this changed. Or why isn't this working out? Or why does it seem like I have good days and bad days? And God is just simply saying, you want to go to summer, and I have you in winter. You're not ready for the next step. You're not ready. Your kids are still little. Your kids are still small. Your kids still need you. But you want to be on this side. You want to be over here. And this dad that has the grandkids and is struggling and is seeing his kids not serving God, he's saying, don't rush your season. Don't rush. What's the hurry? God has so many things ready for us and planned for us if we just enjoy the season. And just when we start to lose hope and frustration starts to settle in, I sense that many dads who are watching this morning, many dads who are here this morning, have let frustration settle in and you shut down. And maybe today you're promising and saying, I'm not going to be the dad that my dad was. And some of us on the other side are saying, I wish I could be half the dad that he was. And I have a long way to go. There's two extremes. Maybe you're in the middle, but there's 2 extremes. And when frustration settles in and we start to lose hope, we need to realize that he is in control of the seasons. And it's up to us to understand and do this. This is difficult. But as a dad, I don't want you to admit this, and if you do, that's fine. But I know that I've done this many, many times where I've literally either driving home by myself or I've been at home alone and I look in a mirror, even if I'm getting dressed for work, I look in the mirror and I look at myself in the mirror. And I said, I'll tell myself, you have screwed things up. You have messed things up because you have rushed the season. And I look up to God and I say, God, why? I've served you. I haven't been perfect, yes, but I could be doing so much worse. I could be doing so many other things. And even on some of the best, most convicting times have been when I'm in my car alone. And I can scream and I can yell and I can pray and I can yell at myself. And it's like God telling me, son, I've had you here because you're not ready for the next season in your life. You're not ready. And as parents and as dads, we mess up so much. Not because I don't think it's because you want to. I don't think it's because you hate your wife or your kids or you don't know what to do. I'm sorry, because you just are a mean person. Maybe some. But I think a lot of it is because we don't know the season that we're in our life. We don't understand and are not taking everything out of that time in our life. You may feel alone, but never abandoned. When God doesn't do what I think he should do right away, I think he's mad at me. How many of you have been there before? When you don't think what he should do right away, it's like, what did I do? What did I? Oh my God, he read my mind yesterday. That's why this is not happening. No, that's not the reason. That's not how God is. The purpose of God was in place before your problems arrived. The purpose that God has for you and your family is there and was there before your problems arrived. But God's not ready to take you out of that season yet. And one of the most important things that you can do if you've never done this, and this is going to hurt. Are you ready? If you're at home watching, this is going to hurt. But you need to sit down or stand up and literally take a 360 picture of your life, of what's happening in your life, what's happening with your kids, what's happening with your relationships. That's one of the first things we need to do as a parent is literally take a stand and stand there and say, this is reality. Some of us are so disconnected from reality because we're still trying to correct the mistakes that we made when our kids were 5, but now they're 35 with 5-year-olds, and you can't do the same thing that you did at that age. If the enemy can make you doubt your faith, then he's already won. And see, as I love when my dad says this, and I hear people say this, Pentecostals, apostolics, all of you watching online, you blame the devil too much. How many of you, I remember my mom even and my grandmother, this happened, el diablo, era el diablo. Like right away, the other day Riley fell and hurt her knee, and the first thing out of my mind, the devil, right? We blame the devil for everything. And it's really what we just read. God controls the devil. How about that? God controls the seasons. It's not the devil, it's me. It's you, it's us. We're the ones that doubt. But if you really want to get out, if you really want to do something great for God, you are going to go through things that you can't fix. You're going to go through life and situations that you have no control over and that you cannot fix. The important thing is to understand why I'm going through it or why I went through it, and not what, as in what's happening. It's why am I going through this? Why is this happening? And instead it's move on to what do I need to do to get out? And as I start to end, I want to introduce you really quickly to a father that did not understand his seasons, to a father that was in church all of his life and did not understand his seasons. I want to go to 1 Samuel chapter 2 and start with verse 12. And I love how this starts really quickly. And it says, Eli's sons were scoundrels. They had no regard for the Lord. Who was Eli? He was a high priest in Israel. He died because he fell off a chair and broke his neck. Notice that if you read the story and if you go through this book, Eli was considered a good man. Eli was a high priest. He raised his kids in the church. Eli didn't do any major sin. Eli was someone that loved and respected the Ark of the Covenant. He respected the presence of God. But Eli was a terrible father. And my first point for this is Eli was present but permissive. He was present but tolerant. And as parents, especially in this time of day, in these days that we're living, being present isn't enough. Just bringing your kids here to church and putting them online or doing whatever it is that you think they need to do to get saved isn't enough. If you read in verse 12, it says, Eli's sons were scoundrels. They had no regard for the Lord. Verse 13,
Now it was the practice of the priest that whenever any of the people offered a sacrifice, the priest's servants would come with the three-pronged fork in the hand while the meat was being boiled, next verse, and would plunge the fork into the pan or kettle or cauldron or pot. Whatever the fork brought up, the priest would take for himself. This is how they treated all the Israelites who came to Shiloh, next verse. But even before the fat was burned, the priest's servant would come and say to the person who was sacrificing, "Give the priest some meat to roast. He won't accept boiled meat from you, but only raw," next verse. If the person said to him, "Let the fat be burned, let the fat be burned first, and then take whatever you want," the servant would answer, "No, hand it over now. If you don't, I'll take it by force." Next verse. The sin of the young men of Eli's sons was great in the Lord's sight, for they were treating the Lord's offering with contempt. Next verse. But Samuel was ministering before the Lord, a boy wearing a linen ephod. Next verse. Each year his mother made him a little robe and took it to him when she went up with her husband to offer the annual sacrifice. Next verse. Eli would bless Elkanah and his wife, saying, "May the Lord give you children by this woman to take the place of the one she prayed for and gave to the Lord, that they would then go home." Next verse. And the Lord was gracious to Hannah. She gave birth to 3 sons and 2 daughters. Meanwhile, the boy Samuel grew up in the presence of the Lord. Next verse. Now Eli, who was very old, heard about everything his sons were doing. What were they doing? They were committing fornication in the temple, on the steps of the temple. They were stealing what was for the Lord, the sacrifices. They were stealing it. What happened? Eli served as a high priest for 40 years. That means his sons were there with him, step by step. What happened? What happened to his sons? He was present. He was there, they were there, but he was tolerant. He was tolerant of their sin. How do I know that? Now Eli, who was very old, heard about everything his sons were doing to Israel and how they slept with the women who served at the entrance to the tent of meeting. Next verse. So he said to them, the first time it's recorded that he says anything to his sons. After all these years, how many times as parents, as dads, have you been present with your kids thinking that's enough? But this whole time you're being permissive and tolerant of the sin in your house, of the sin in our house. And it's like going, I think Eli possibly wished that he can go back to when they were here, when they were 3, 4, 5 years old, and say, I'm going to be more than present. What could he have done different? He was present, yet permissive. At this point, now it's too late. It's too late. Now they're full of sin. Earlier we read that they had no disregard for the Lord. He was busy. Eli was busy but bewildered. Not knowing how. Think about this. It took until someone came and told him, this is what your sons are doing. He said nothing, turned a blind eye. Present but permissive. And now he's been so busy working for the Lord. He's confused. How does he not see it? Bewildered, perplexed, confused. What happened to my family? As we read, so he then says to his boys, why do you do such things? Notice he didn't say, I saw, son, why? No. I hear from all the people about these wicked deeds of yours. Next verse. No, my sons, the report I hear. Think about that. Think about that he has to tell his sons about a report. Where was he? Where are you? Where am I? In the life of my kids right now that my kids are 10, 9, or 10, 8, 5, and 4 months, and 6 months. I cannot repeat these years with my kids anymore. I can't. And I'm sorry, Mom and Dad, but the way I am now, you can't go back to when I was young. You can't go back and say, okay, son, this is how you do things. This is how you serve God. No, you don't say this. You don't do this. That's over. It was over. It's too late. He was out of season. He was busy. Now he's perplexed. Now he's confused. No, my sons, the report I hear spreading among the Lord's people is not good. Next. If one person sins against one another, God may mediate for the offender. But if anyone sins against the Lord, who will intercede for them? They were sinning against God. His sons, however, before I get to this, think about that. Growing up with Samuel, growing up in the same area, the same home, and no, when we started, his sons were scoundrels. They had no regard for the Lord, did not know God. And here his dad, probably, maybe older, obviously, too late to fix what he had done, the mistakes he made. And he's like, why? His sons, however, did not listen to their father's rebuke. There will be a day that scares me, that my sons will not hear my rebuke because it's too late. It's too late. What I did here, that season's over, Dad. That season's over. And if you are here and your dad was worse than this, and you're saying, I'm gonna be better for my son, I'm gonna be better for my daughter. If you were hurt by your dad, if Father's Day has an odd feeling, if it doesn't feel joy or happy, my first point to you there is, don't miss that season. Don't miss that season. His sons, however, did not listen to their father's rebuke, for it was the Lord's will to put them to death. Next verse. And the boy Samuel continued to grow in stature and in favor with the Lord and with people. In the same home that the next prophet was going to come out of was the same sin that these boys were doing. Next verse. Now a man of God came to Eli and said to him, this is what the Lord says. Did I not clearly reveal myself to your ancestors' family when they were in Egypt under Pharaoh? Next verse. I chose your ancestor out of all the tribes of Israel to be my priest, to go up to my altar, to burn incense, and to wear an ephod in my presence. I also gave your ancestors' family all the food offerings presented by the Israelites. Next verse. Why do you scorn my sacrifice and offering what I prescribed for my dwelling? Why do you honor your sons more than me? He started to then sin with his sons. When we lose that influence with our kids, it will take over your family. Tolerance of sin in your family will destroy your family to the point that he started to sin with them. How many times as we get up in age, how many people have you seen that kids have grown up and now the dad's showing them how to do the joint, and the dad's taking them here and there, and now the dad's involved in this and that. It got to the point where the sin and the permissiveness took over the family. Why do you honor your sons more than me by fattening yourselves on the choice parts of every offering made by the people of Israel? Next verse. Therefore the Lord, the God of Israel, declares, I promised that members of your family would minister before me forever. But now, the Lord declares, far be it from me. That is scary to be there. Far from the Lord when he tells you. You see, the promise was there for his family. The promise is there for you. But if you don't understand the seasons of life as a parent, God's going to tell you one day, it's going to happen. I've seen it. He's going to say, far be it from me. Those who honor me, I will honor. But those who despise me, will be disdained. Next verse. The time is coming when I will cut short your strength and the strength of your priestly house, so that no one in it will reach old age. Sin that we as fathers will sometimes let go and turn a blind eye because I don't want to bother him. I don't want to bother her. I don't know. They'll be okay. I did a good job when they were young. I'll be okay. No. If they're living in sin now, if they're doing it now, it didn't happen. And trust me, I know there's a lot of things that are out of our control. I know life happens. I know things happen. I know there are good parents. I see everybody here a good parent. And life happens. But our job is to be more than present, not to be permissive, so that no one will reach old age. Next verse. And you will see distress in my dwelling, although good will be done to Israel. No one in your family will ever reach old age. And as I come to a close and the team can come up, it's interesting because we will read later on in 1 Samuel 4 that Eli's sons, Hophni and Phinehas, they go out to battle. They go out to fight the Philistines. And see what they think is going to happen, because they, at that time, had the Ark of the Covenant. And when they go out to battle, even though they are sinning, they take the Ark of the Covenant with them, thinking it's going to be enough, thinking it's going to be okay. But you know what? I've learned you can't take mom and dad or grandma's Christianity and relationship with you and think you're going to be okay. You can't. You can't think that because my grandma or great grandma or my dad did this that I'm going to be okay. Nope. They go out there, and I'll tell you the story. They go out there, and not only are they killed, but the Philistines take the Ark of the Covenant. So God's promise comes true. He kills those sons. The sons full of sin, he kills them. Somebody goes back to tell Eli, and Eli in his old age can't even see anymore, 98 years old, is sitting there in a chair, and someone says, hey, they killed 30,000 men. And he says, okay. And they said, oh, and your two sons, they're dead. Okay. Oh, and they took the Ark of the Covenant. The presence of God is not with you anymore. The Spirit of God has left your home. It's gone because you're out of season. And the Bible then goes on to say that Phinehas had a wife and she was pregnant. And when news comes to her that her father-in-law had died, that her husband had died, that her brother-in-law had died, she starts to go into distress as she's having the baby, and she's gonna die. The Bible says she's gonna die, and she does. But before she dies, before she goes, she has a son, and they ask her, "What will you name your son?" She says, "I'm gonna name him Ichabod." Ichabod. What does Ichabod mean? It means the glory has left the house. And see, she didn't name him that because his dad had died or his grandpa had died. Yes, we're important. Dads are extremely important in our lives. You know why she named him Ichabod? Because the presence of God had left their family. The presence of God had left. When she found out that the Ark of the Covenant had been stolen, she called him Ichabod, no glory. The glory has left the house. Think about this. High priest for 40 years, serving, bringing them to church, loving God, doing what he thought was right. From there, and having the presence of God in his possession, the Ark of the Covenant in his possession. The Ark of the Covenant, the presence of God in your possession. To 2 generations later, no glory. No glory. You sinned. You were tolerant. You were permissive. You didn't speak up when you needed to speak up. You didn't say, "No, son, no, daughter, that's not going to happen here. I'm not going to do that. We're not going to go that direction." And if you think that your family is immune to it, there is nobody immune to sin in a family. If God promised him that they would live to old age and he prophesied over them, maybe he thought it was an easy out. Maybe he thought, I'm good, I can coast, I don't need to anymore. He went from here, having the ark, to no glory. I don't want to be no glory. I don't want to be in a position where it's too late. And if you're hearing my voice, if you're watching me, if you're a grandfather, if you have kids that are old, 20s, 15, and you know, things change, we get weird, right? As we grow, we get weird. I love my son to death, my 10-year-old, and I told my wife the other day, he's getting kind of weird. You know, not because of Not because he's weird, but that age we get odd. You know, we say weird things, and this message is for me right now. There are things I can't change from what I did a few years ago with my kids. It's too late, but this is the good news. There's an answer. And I want you to stand if you can, please. There is an answer. And here it is. If you're hearing the sound of my voice and you're thinking it's too late, I blew it. I blew it. Maybe, but there's still time. You're still in that season. You've got to ask God, what do I need to learn? What do I need to get out of this season? And as I was going through the scripture, as I was going through this, I came upon a very popular psalm, and I said, this is it. This is the answer. Blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor stands in the path of sinners, nor sits in the seat of the scornful. But his delight is in the law of the Lord. And here it is. Here it is, dads. Here it is, right here. And in his law does he meditate day and night. And in his law does he meditate day and night. And he shall be like a tree. And he shall be like a tree planted, not thrown, not just put to the side, Dad. No, you are a tree planted by the rivers of water. If we can get that, if we can grab a hold to that you are planted, you are not thrown, you're not a nobody. If your dad was a bad dad, if you grew up in bad circumstances, if you were abused, if nobody told you they love you, if you just didn't have that experience, God is telling you today that you are like a tree planted. How do you plant a tree? You dig deep, you put roots, planted by the rivers of water. And here it is. I didn't give her this verse. It's my fault, Sister Jackie. I didn't give it to you. That brings forth fruit in its season. That brings forth fruit in its season. But it's not until you are a tree planted by the rivers of water that you will bring forth fruit in your season. Whose leaf shall not wither, and whatever he does shall prosper. And if you've come this morning and you think that you've given up and you think it's too late, you can praise God for what he's brought you to now. You can still say, you know what? I messed up. I did. I'm not planted by a river like a tree. But you can still say, God, I'm going to worship you for what you brought me through and where you brought me to and from where you brought me from. I don't know if we do. Can we do altar calls? Do we do altar calls? No altar calls? Okay. Throw your hands in the air. Grab your family. They're going to sing. They're going to sing right now.
Death could not hold.
Hold on. They're going to sing in a minute, in 30 seconds. They're going to sing in 30 seconds. I want every hand raised, every eye closed. Grab a hold of your husband, your dad, whoever's next to you. And right now is the time to speak life into him. You tell your dad, you are a tree planted by the rivers of water. You will not be tolerant. And in your season, you will give forth fruit in your season. If you believe it, I want you to raise your hands right now high. I want you to raise your hands high. And I want you to start worshiping God like you know he's going to bring you out of this.